Hello, welcome to Breakfast Central on a Friday. Thank God it's Friday. So many things to unpack and to dissect. Looking at the news cycle in the last 24 hours. And trust us, to do that here on Breakfast Central, the best way to start your day. I am Benga Aborowa. Welcome to today's show. It's, bumper. And we have quite a lot to go through.
That's right. We're saying welcome to Breakfast Central. It's TGIF. Thank God it's Friday. Yesterday, so many things, like Benga said, to unpack. But we're welcoming our viewers and our audience to please feel free to communicate and keep the conversation going. You can actually drop a comment or two. We're streaming live on YouTube. You can also find us live on Facebook, X, and the likes. But today, the stories unfold, and we're here to unpack each and every single one of them. My name is Joe Hansen. Oliver's around the corner. She joins us pretty soon. But let's start off with a very big story, right from yesterday. It was a long conversation and a long day in court, which has spanned over 4 years and counting. And eventually it ended yesterday. Although the lawyers have come out to say that they will appeal the judgment. But then again, let's tell you about what it's all about. It's a case of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, which eventually came to an end for many. The court convicted him. It was life imprisonment, especially for terrorism. That was what was said as well. This was when he took to the stand to speak first. Right before we wrapped up breakfast yesterday, and then he decided to go out of hand
all the way to the afternoon.
Yeah,
Later
all the way,
afternoon.
all the way. But let's get to listen to how it started off. Just take a listen to how it started. In the meantime, Benga, let's not forget that this was going to be a big decision that will be made by the courts. There were expectations.
We had our correspondent Joshua Emerai, who was there throughout the proceedings at the Federal High Court in Abuja yesterday, and it was filled with drama. There was a particular time where Mazi Nnamdi Kanu lost his temper, and Justice Omotosho ordered security operatives in the courts to escort him out of the chambers because he was acting in an unruly manner before he calmed down, and they had to stop proceedings for a while, and then he came back. It was quite a long day. We went through his rap sheet, and then before the judgment was delivered. And it's led to intense debate on social media and, of course, across the political sphere. Some feel he was that there was a miscarriage of justice. On the other side, people feel, this is justice served and deserved for the lives that have been lost due to his insightful statements and what have you. But trust Nigerians to react, and we'll bring you their reactions as we speak. But let's take a listen to
Let's see how it started. Yeah, starting from here.
It all started, yes.
You are the one running their case for them. Let them show me that the prosecution, show me where it says you can waive my right to family written address. And I'll sit down.
You have the right to appeal after...
No, my lord. This is a perversion of the cause of justice. This is not law. It is not law.
Can you excuse me?
My lord, I cannot excuse nullity and illegality.
Can you let him
it's not possible. It is not possible, my lord. You must show me where the Constitution says you have the right to waive my written address. You must show me.
Excuse him.
Show me. Show me where it says so. Show me. Show me where it says so.
Excuse him.
Is that why you brought the cameras? Is that why you brought them today?
Please.
You didn't bring it before. You brought it today.
Please.
Show me where it says you can try me on a repeat law. Show me.
Please.
Show me where it says you can try me on a repeat law. I said, show me. Show me.
Excuse me.
Show me.
Get the microphone from him.
No, leave it. Leave it. Leave it. I said, leave it. It's a court of law. I'm under trial. I'm under trial. I have to speak. I'm under trial and I have to speak. Listen to me. Listen to me, please. I'm under trial. I'm under trial. I'm under trial, and I must address the court.
I hereby sentence the convicts to life imprisonment for the said counts 1, 4, 5, and 6 instead of death sentence. Life is sacred to God. With respect to count 3, he is hereby sentenced to 20 years imprisonment without no option or fine. For count 7, he is sentenced to 5 years imprisonment without no option or fine. To extend the mercy, I hereby order that the sentence shall run concurrently. And due to the nature of the offenses that borders on terrorism, and
today is the only day I have witnessed a man being convicted for mere puffery, for what he said from his mouth, not what he did with his own hands. The verdict is not consistent with the evidence laid before the court. The sentence is overbroad, cruel, and unusual. How can you convict a man for making mere broadcasts from a location that was never named, and he never tied that broadcast to any single incident of violence, or even someone slapping someone, not to talk of terrorism? You did all this, you didn't lay any evidence. I don't know where this whole verdict can be grounded in law, logic, or facts. We disagree with the judgment vehemently. Yes. And we are going to fight it from here onwards until justice is done.
The detention of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is a clear example. In 2022, Nigeria's Court of Appeal struck down the charges against him and ordered his release. The UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has also called for his unconditional release. Yet he remains in solitary confinement, in deteriorating health, and recently had to represent himself in court. Nigeria has signaled that the law is optional and targeting.
And look at where we are today in Nigeria. Look at where we are. Nigeria is in the throes of some of its worst security situation. And this is what we are wasting our time doing. You know, we have 35 Christians at the time that we have been accused of persecution of Christians in the bush, attacked by terrorists who were live streamed. You have 25 female students, Muslims, also in the bush with terrorists. You have an army general who has just been murdered by terrorists. You are not focused on that. You are trying Nnamdi Kanu because they carry the microphone to say that he wants Biafra. The only evidence they have in this court is the microphone that they found with him when he was arrested in Lagos. His underwear, top and bottom. There is no evidence of a gun or an RPG. He was not found with police uniforms. Whereas in Katsina, someone killed an assistant commissioner of police, kept his uniform and wore the uniform to a peace conference, the so-called peace conference. And nothing is done about it. They bring their magazines and their AK-47s and their anti-aircraft guns to meetings. You can't do anything about them, but it's the guy who wears a nice Fendi and a microphone and says, we want justice. 10 years, you can't figure it out. Anytime the person opening the door to a civil court is a military man, that's no longer a civil trial. That one has become a court martial. And this case, as a result, has suffered that credibility from day one. Apart from other problems, one of which is the kidnapping, what is known as the extraordinary rendition of Nnamdi Kanu from Kenya. You cannot cure that. You cannot cure the absence of evidence. You cannot cure every other problem you brought upon yourself in this case from day one. And that's what we have told them. And in general, because this is also foundational to Nigeria. Nigeria is in search of unity, they claim. Nigeria is in search of nationhood because it has never become a nation. If you want to make that happen, you do justice to all the components of Nigeria. You don't discriminate against somebody because his name is somebody you don't like, or because it's really.
Well, that's the reactions that you will get from different quarters concerning the sentencing, which happened yesterday by Justice James Omotosho. Well, Omotosho has spoken. You also had Nnamdi Kanu's legal as well. They've spoken. But guys, it's finally done.
So the concern with the sentencing of Nnamdi Kanu is the fact that, just like Omotosho had expressed, there have been people who have committed grave acts of terrorism. But what do? We bring in Sheikh Gumi, he negotiates peace deals, agreements with them. He makes excuses and gives us reasons why you would see that these bandits and terrorists are doing what they're doing. We hear that they are being de-radicalized, they're brought back into the society, their children are given access to education, they're being taken proper care of. What we see is bandits who go on TikTok, displaying their guns and the cash that they have. Until today, have we heard of any of the arrests of all these bandits on social media who are brandishing their weapons and brandishing the money that they're receiving? What we see is a country where people have accepted that kidnapping is the order of the day, where in the NYC handbook, it is reported that they were giving you guidelines on how to act if you're being kidnapped. Not to argue with not to argue with the kidnappers, not to give them much information about yourself. I saw that, that document, and I was scared to my bones to say that we've gotten to this level in our society. That is what we have. And these kidnappers and bandits and terrorists, they are treated with kids' gloves. So the question is, couldn't there have been a different way to handle this, especially because Nigeria's court in 2022 had given a judgment that had said Nnamdi Kanu should be released from detention. Are we saying that the Nigerian state is above the law? Are we saying now, at that time in 2022, that the courts did not apply, the judgment of the court did not apply, but in 2025, the court's judgment will apply? So can we then pick and choose what is right and what isn't? So if we're saying, for example, that we're sentencing him to life imprisonment, one would hope and expect that that is the same kind of treatment that is given to all the bandits and all the terrorists around the country, and it doesn't look like some form of selective justice. This is concerning. It's concerning because there could have been maybe, like they've said, a political way to deal with this situation, especially because the Southeast governors, they had all said, they've talked about it, they've come together. So good for the goose is good for the gander. If you would say that you're giving negotiations and options out for the bandits and terrorists who actually carried out the attacks by themselves, maybe that's, many would argue that that sort of mercy or leniency should have been applied to Nnamdi Kanu.
Anyway, I'm sure Benga has been highlighting some of the major Benga. I mean, you've been deep in thoughts. I mean,
like we always say here, two things can be right at the same time, and two things can be true. And
two truths can coexist.
Two truths can coexist. Now, you could do multiple things at the same time. The previous government under President Buhari was the one that started this carrot and stick approach, and non-kinetic means rehabilitating bandits. And looking at the luxury of hindsight, we can tell how that went, that there's absolutely no sense in it, because they will go back and they will hold the nation ransom. It was an idea that shouldn't have seen the light of day, because we're dealing with the consequences today. Having said that, I mean, Nnamdi Kanu had his right to a lawyer. He waived that, decided to
represent himself,
defend himself. And during the trial, there were audio tapes that were played of him broadcasting via Radio Biafra, calling for the burning of airports, the destruction of people, the killing of policemen, and he also said that their cops should be beheaded. He said really terrible things, inciting violence. And, the prosecution also, used one of the IPOB commanders as a star witness. When you don't represent yourself in court, given the full arsenal of your SANS and your defense team, I guess you're just setting yourself up for what you get. And let's also remember, Aloy Ejimakor in his statement said, he was punished for mere words. These are mere words. Words are very powerful. When you're calling for the end of someone's life and you're doing it passionately, we also remember lessons in history. Radio, television, Mill Collins, RTML radio. Felicien Kabuga was sentenced to life imprisonment in the International Court of Justice for his role in inciting violence via RTML radio during the Rwandan genocide, calling them cockroaches. He made these statements, referring to different ethnic groups in Nigeria, using disparaging words to describe an entire group of people. So when people paint him as a Mandela, I don't think he's a Mandela. There's nothing nation building or unifying. And no one is saying, look, you cannot agitate for the wrongdoings of your people. You have representatives. There are other ways to go about it. But when you're inciting violence, when you're disparaging entire communities of people, of course, there will be consequences for that. When you call for policemen to be killed, for them to be beheaded, of course, the government is not going to sit back and relax.
I'm not holding brief for him or saying that it's okay for him to call for the police to be beheaded or for the police to be killed. What the sentiment we see expressed is the fact that the ones who have actually carried out
he should not allow himself, do not allow yourself to be used as a scapegoat. Don't look at other people and say, oh, the bandits are doing this. It's a failure on the part of the government not to deal decisively with the issue of bandits and those carrying RPGs and having peace meetings. They should be exterminated. That's another issue. So face your own issue. You will set yourself up to be used as a scapegoat. And you did all these things they're accusing you of doing. There's evidence, so deal with the consequences. But the good thing is he has a right to appeal.
Yes, he does.
Sure, they will appeal. So we'll see how that.
And then again, Justice Omotosho also did mention that he can be kept in any protective custody around within the country. It doesn't have to be in Kuje prison in Abuja. So if they decide to move him to the southeast, he can move there and then he can be kept there.
If they
decide to move him to
nobody's moving him to
the middle belt.
I don't know that
whichever way you want to move him.
They won't do that.
He can
They
move.
won't move him to the southeast because they understand that
Because of course
there will be
political
risk for them.
Yeah.
Because there have been agitations in Igbo are visibly agitated by.
But he mentioned anywhere in Nigeria. So
you think
I think
the Nigerian Correctional Services would do that?
East. They will never do that. The Igbo don't seem very pleased with what has happened and the judgment that was given by Justice Omotosho. And there have been reactions in a few quarters. One of them is one who's popular on social media, businessman and entrepreneur, Cubana chief priest, who wrote an open letter to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He says, as long as MNK remains in jail, you cannot and will never get up to 10,000 votes in Southeast come 2027. I will not lie to you, Papa. As a friend of your government, I have no reason to whitewash you. MNK is the supreme leader of Southeast. His detention has caused us so much setback. And I'm so surprised that all your ministers from Southeast can't even tell you the truth because anyway, I'll skip. He says none of them has the capacity and can do anything to make the people love and respect you. As for governors, they will all disappoint you because they will tell us absolute nothing. Only MNK release can save you. Actually, Tinubu, all those people on that table with you at Delbro Hotel the other day are just bags of deceit, including me. I like that he didn't exclude himself. They can't do anything for you. They can't even go to their hometowns because of MNK detention. So how can they help you? They only want lands from you to develop and sell. You know me, I don't need anything from you. Villa na hotel, na few more days. Your checkout time will reach. And only MNK can guarantee you real votes from Southeast. Look out for Governor Alex Oti. He can convince people genuinely. Also, I was surprised when you missed his invitation to commission his project in Abia, where MNK hails from. Ashwaju sends, Anyway, I'll skip.
I mean, I don't even know why we're taking this. Who is Cubana chief priest?
He's a
I mean, look at the way he's even typing. There are consequences for behavior. If you act in a certain way outside the law, you deal with it. I don't understand this gaslighting.
So why maybe we're taking Cuba, or why we're taking Cubana chief priest's reaction is, one, he's a Nigerian. Two, he's from the southeast.
I don't think he has the right to speak for Igbo people in general.
But don't forget
that Nnamdi Kanu is the supreme leader of all Igbos in Nigeria.
But don't forget that
who made him supreme leader.
But don't forget too that he's a major supporter of this administration.
I understand.
And there have been talks linking him to be very close to this administration, whereby they feel that he would not speak when this case has been resolved. But finally, he's actually one out of many whom a lot of the Southeasterners are expecting to speak. They never even expected him.
Yes, they applaud him. If you go to the comment section,
they're expecting the governors. They're expecting
but his statement is not coherent.
And so on. Yeah,
why is he typing like that? The content of a statement. How do you? I mean, do you expect the president to subvert the law and just ask them to release him?
Not really.
Yeah.
But then again, there's.
What about the victims? People that have died as a result. You know, there were uniformed personnel, two Nigerian army
killed, many of them.
People died as a result of this statement.
Many of them.
And they're acting like it's a victimless crime. It's not a Mandela.
And then there's this Monday sit-at-home issue as well that did come up from
exactly.
there.
But there were times when he came out to denounce the sit-at-home order. There were times when he had spoken expressly
that he wasn't
to denounce it and ask them to stop it. Yes,
and there was an audio recording of him saying if anybody steps out on a Monday, that they will kill, they should kill the person.
You know what this basically shows us?
Yeah.
That fundamentally there is a discontent. And we cannot ignore that there is a discontent among the southeastern.
And calling for people to be killed, is that the right way to go about it?
I said that
never.
I'm not saying that it's right, but we can't deny. This goes back to what I said yesterday. We oftentimes treat symptoms without going to the root of the problem. There is obviously a discontent by Igbo in Nigeria who feel they've been marginalized and haven't been heard. It's why many of them will make a hero out of Nnamdi Kanu, because he seems to be championing the cause of the equality of Igbo or the cessation of the Igbo tribe. But we are not the ones who are going to share with you what this is. We've shared, different thoughts from different corners. But let's head to X and see what Nigerians are saying. Nefertiti says, a Yoruba Muslim convicted an Igbo Christian on trumped-up charges bordering on terrorism. Nnamdi Kanu has become another prisoner of selective judgment and judicial rascality. Let history remember. The next tweet is from Ahmad El Khalil. He says, they created the problem and then later offered to help, and they capitalized on it. I'm not sure
what he's talking about here.
This one is replying to someone. He says, I doubt if you are aware of how core northern Nigeria works. Some of us have lived the realities, and I believe many have also done the same. Can we please go back there? I'm not yet done with that tweet. He says, okay, anyway, let's move on. Chidebere says, with all the destruction that various Islamic terrorist groups have inflicted on Nigeria over the years, it is troubling that not a single major perpetrator has been publicly tried or convicted for terrorism. Yet, today, under a government led by a Muslim president and vice president, and before a Muslim judge, a Christian has been convicted on trumped-up charges of terrorism. The disparity raises serious questions about fairness, balance, and the credibility of our justice system, and the impartiality of Muslim-led government. Justice loses its moral force when it appears selective, when those who have unleashed violence on the nation roam free, while dissenting voices are prosecuted. It becomes difficult for citizens to trust that the law is being applied without bias. A nation cannot survive on unequal justice. For Nigeria to move forward, justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done. I think it's Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes that said that. Transparently and without prejudice. Full stop. Okay, let's take one more. Comedian Kuboko says, Nnamdi Kanu sentenced. No, he wasn't sentenced to death, please. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. But Sheikh Gumi is a celebrity. I just hope the government knows what they're doing. How can I explain this? The presidency organized rehabilitation for Boko Haram, who have caused more terror and killed thousands, including women and children, also cleared them to join the army. But sentences Nnamdi Kanu
I mean, where this guy is getting, this report
for fighting to death, it's not death, for fighting to protect his people. Given the level of unrest, incitement, and violence that escalated under his movement, from enforced sit-at-home orders to attacks linked to armed factions claiming loyalty to him, what alternative sentence do you believe the judge should have considered? With the lives lost, communities destabilized, and the wave of fear his rhetoric contributed to across the Southeast, what punishment would you say fits the weight and consequences of his actions?
I want to say well done to Oluwatobilola. I think this is the crux of the matter. We can sit down here and we can talk about the justice system. We can talk about the sentencing and so on. But the question, the biggest question all Nigerians should ask is, what would have been the right judgment? What could have been the right judgment? What could have been the judgment that would indeed settle
according to Cubana Chief Priest? Should have just opened the doors and let him.
So I think the majority of the arguments would be
that's the biggest question here.
Must come with clean hands. In this case, can we say that the federal government has acted with clean hands regarding Nnamdi Kanu's case? We can't also say, can we also say completely that Nnamdi Kanu is with clean hands? That's one, right? So both parties have liabilities on either party, would argue.
But I mean...
then you look at Simon Ekpa, who was also accused of,
inciting
participating in the terrorism
fights,
public incitement to commit crimes. How many years was he sentenced to? 6 years.
6 years.
Finland is different from Nigeria, and we're comparing apples and oranges. The gravity of their crimes are different.
They were both leaders.
No, one was in exile, the other one was here, and they actively carried out his orders, and we saw clear and present results of that. To show you the gravity and the seriousness of how the Finnish justice system works. It wasn't even here. It was all the way in Finland, and he still got convicted for 6 years.
Yeah. The judges said that he was
just speaking according to Aloy Ejimako. It was just mere words. So why would he be convicted for mere words in Finland when he wasn't even in Nigeria?
Anyway, we can't exhaust this conversation, but just to mention, since we're talking about Aloy Ejimako, Simon Ekpa, right? The judge said he was more than just a commentator. He was an influential member of a militant separatist movement whose goal was Biafran independence. And according to the ruling, he equipped the groups with weapons, explosives, and ammunition through his contact.
Nnamdi Kanu called for donation for weapons to do.
I'm pointing that out because they're saying that they're both very separate.
We just need to start the show, but I think this has set the tone where we have very critical questions to ask. They're not much. What could have been the right justice in this matter?
What would justice mean in this case?
What would justice mean in this case? That's one. Two, when you... Don't worry. There are many. If I go on, we'll keep going.
Let's get to top. But before
we have some guests joining us.
Let's also ask our guests, our viewers watching virtually. We're streaming live on YouTube, News Central Live. Please go there and drop a comment and let us know your thoughts regarding this. Whilst we take comments from X, we also take comments from our YouTube live chat. So we want to see your comments in the chat box. But now let's hear what our headlines this morning are.
Court sentences Nnamdi Kanu to life imprisonment. Nigeria lacks capacity to protect citizens, says U.S. congressman. And federal government allegedly ignored Kebbi attack warnings. Wike blasts PDP leadership. And of course, we bring you the newspaper front pages much later during the course of the show. Breakfast Central continues shortly.
Welcome back. The Federal High Court in Abuja has convicted Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra IPOB, on all 7 counts of terrorism charges. Justice James Omotosho ruled that Kanu's broadcast and sit-at-home orders incited violence and constituted acts of terrorism.
The court found Kanu guilty of issuing violent threats and sit-at-home orders inciting attacks on security forces belonging to proscribed organization IPOB and ESN and using broadcasts to encourage insurrection. But just before judgment was delivered, there was a mild drama in court and Nnamdi Kanu had to be taken out of court.
You have already a case for them. Let them show me that the Constitution, show me where it says you can waive my right to family meeting address. And I'll sit down.
You have the right to appeal after...
No, my lord. This is a perversion of the cause of justice. This is not law. It is not law.
Can you excuse me?
Justice actually mean? Well, joining us today for this discussion, we do have Executive Director of Lead Network Africa, Chukwuma Okenwa, who joins us. And he's been following this case right from time immemorial, as far as I can remember. We also have National Legal Advisor, the Legal Advisor Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, CDHR. He joins us as well. Henry Ikine, thank you so much for being here, gentlemen. The country right now is reeling from the fact that judgment has been served. But I think the biggest question that I've asked while we started the show this morning, and I'm going to go straight to you, Chukwuma, is what will true justice actually mean in this case? Looking at the fact that we've seen what happened during those announcements in the Southeast, and you also have talked about it here on the program, and now we've seen a final judgment. So what could true justice, what could it have, meant? Chukwuma, you can go on, please.
Okay,
yes, sorry, at some point the network went off. Yeah, please, the last set of lines you said.
Yeah, I just asked, what would true justice mean? What could it have meant in this case?
And maybe to also give us a reaction of those in the Southeast.
In all, yeah, can you hear me? Okay. So
all right, we seem to have a little network connectivity issues.
In all sense of it, true justice.
Oh dear.
Ooh, okay.
All right.
A little back and forth connected. But let's go to Henry, who's here with us as well. Henry, I'm sure you followed this case in totality, especially from yesterday. So let's get your reactions to the judgment that was indeed served yesterday.
Yes. We've been on this matter for a while. I'm following on even in the different courts that the matter had come, and then the previous positions of the courts in terms of orders relating to bail, and even the decision that had got to the point of exculpating him of some of those counts. And until yesterday, it's been a long ride, no doubt. It's been a long trial. It wasn't unexpected because the allegations are, in my view, legally, offenses that needed to be dispassionately and diligently considered, and then in presenting such credible and weighty evidence in matters as this would take some time. I've had to talk to people that sometimes when you complain that matters stay long in court, it will depend on the nature of the matter and even the procedure in that jurisdiction in entertaining certain matters. So this particular proceeding that had gone on this trial, treason, terrorism, and all of the other charges that have been leveled against Nnamdi Kanu, and through the course until yesterday, it's been a long trial indeed. But to say about justice, I heard you when you asked my colleague the question whether justice has been served, or in what way that justice may be considered to be served. Apparently, justice isn't just in one direction. We've always said that justice to the society is important. Justice to the accused person, in this case, Nnamdi Kanu, the defendant, is important. And justice to the state, in this case, the complainant, is important. And then looking at this totally, one would imagine that the balance for me doesn't seem to actually align with the realities of the circumstances in our society. The state in this case may pride itself to have attained justice on the ground that they level certain allegation of terrorism against the defendant, the suspect, and then may pride also to have established the case as held by the court. But the question we would ask is how much of justice will the people, society, and society here may not be the entire Nigerian society, but particularly the segment of the Nigerian society, the Southeast, and then those who subscribe to the movement that Nnamdi Kanu is alleged to have led, the Biafra movement, and then the agitation for self-determination. Will it be justice to them? Absolutely no. And then to Nnamdi Kanu, the defendant, once a judgment is against a defendant in a criminal trial, is certainly perceived by that defendant that justice isn't served to him. So considering all of this, the justification may be a different thing, a different argument that, of course, analysts may, from different leanings, hold different views. But in my view, I think we have a lot of talking points and discussions, not just today, but even for the days to come, perhaps until even the expected appeal and until it gets to the end of the decision by the Supreme Court. I would imagine that they should get to.
I'll still come back to you to look at some issues of concern, especially with the idea of delivering a judgment before he's taking his written address and the legality or otherwise. But let's come to Mr. Okenwa. Mr. Okenwa, what is the general reaction and, from the southeastern part of Nigeria, what are the Igbo people saying about Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's, the judgment that's been given to him by the court?
Well, in all honesty, it just seems as if to say the rule of play is different for different members of the country. How would you explain that someone was convicted just merely based on the things he said? Why visibly we've seen the government negotiating with armed wielding terrorists, renowned ones who had, direct attacks, killing our servicemen, compared to like someone who was in a faraway country broadcasting, and that was strong enough to the justice to establish a causation. I mean, that is weak. Even when you want to look at it from an empirical standpoint, like academically, which of course the work of a judge is at most, empirical. It's evidence-based. And so like in the scholarly field, there's a difference between causality and correlation. Correlation does not always translate to causality. That's when you want to establish the cause of a thing. Yes, he made a broadcast, and then some things happened in the Southeast. What is actually empirical evidence to associate that by the virtue of the things he said, this led to this? Now, let me now come to it. For instance, if like in the case of when JAMB, there was problem with, the JAMB results in the Southeast and some other parts of the country, and we saw a JAMB student who went to hang himself, right? It would be weak to actually say that the only reason and the causation why the student hanged himself is because maybe the result was compromised. Otherwise, if that is the case, everyone else would have also taken the same path. There will also be like a kind of some other issues going on with the life of that young child that was undiscovered, and by the virtue of this automatically become all linked up with it. We know there have been that rising spate of insecurity across the country, and we've also had like a former president of the country who like never wanted to accept an outcome of election, and by the virtue of his statements, lots of lives and mayhem was carried out. The question would be, why wasn't he convicted of terrorism? Why do we have a nation where confirmed terrorists are christened as bandits, wheels people who are agitating for fairness, for equity? When you look at Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and the way he argues his case, you will agree with me that he's sound. He knows the law. And I can tell you that no justice in Nigeria who knows the law well can fault him word for word for the things that clearly are his position. You may only just want to discharge it as he's overreacting. It's not overreaction, because detaining someone for all of this way what would you expect like somebody who on his own took up a responsibility to present issues of social injustice? Meanwhile, in that same Nigeria, we've also seen those who felt there's inequity, right? There's unfairness, there's injustice. We've had the likes of Sunday Igboho. How were their cases handled? And now we have a Gumi going about, saying, well, you don't have to handle these guys. You have to get into negotiation with terrorists and nothing is happening. We see clearly the terrorists ignore them. And when you see freedom fighters, you Christian them as terrorists. It doesn't make any sense. Having that said that, one of the things we must understand is that when it comes to like agitations, which are political, we must understand that violence, even though individuals, except government, is only expected to have that monopoly of violence. But you cannot take away violence from any meaningful things that has to do with protecting one's interest, including politics, including democracy. Not just in Nigeria. In the course of that, human beings, when conflicts arises of interest, there's bound to be like one or two that comes up, and that is where, the law now comes into like, law enforcement agencies to restore order. But to talk about an agitation free entirely of violence, that certainly will not be the case, because violence is an integral component of human existence. So you talk about managing it very much like conflicts.
Chukwuma, just a quick follow-up before we move to Henry Ekine. You said Nnamdi Kanu was convicted for mere words, he said. And if you look at a similar case in Finland, Samuel Ekpa was convicted for 6 years for similar offenses in the Finnish court. Would you also describe that as a miscarriage of justice? And what you termed mere words. In the court, the evidence was put out before the judge that Kanu allegedly urged followers to burn down Lagos. There are audio recordings of that, to set the airport on fire, set government buildings aflame. He also called on his followers to manufacture their own weapons. The prosecution says he threatened to burn shops belonging to those who didn't obey a sit-at-home order. And we saw this. Some of these things were carried out. There are also claims he called for the killing of soldiers, ambushing them, and also setting traps on roads, and also beheading some of these soldiers when they're killed. So what do you expect the federal government to do, or what would have been justice for you, given this evidence?
Seen an calling for revolution. Revolution in its sense, there's nothing like a bloodless revolution anywhere. In fact, that similarly suggests like an overthrow of an existing government, but nobody has detained him, maybe like charge him for a treasonable felony, right? We understand that in activism, one of the ways you can actually, get the powers that be to listen to you would actually be like to kind of, to use threats when the need arises. We've had in this country, like an Ashari Dokubo, right? Threatening to shoot down a military aircraft. What can be more demeaning than that? So words does not automatically translate to actions. Otherwise, when a government says we will transform the economy, then we'll begin to enjoy the impact of the economy. So words are cheap, right? Even though meaningful, they may not be entirely be discharged. But then, when you now compare that alongside with some terrorists who have made full proofs of their threats, they are not just at the level of threats. I mean, they are caught red hand, carrying out mayhem on the citizens, and they are, they are even negotiated with. You see them like carrying their arms and negotiating with state actors. I mean, what kind of nation is that? If you now come in that same nation, and for someone agitating, now all of a sudden words has become very powerful. But then for someone who is clearly a terrorist that is being pardoned in that same nation, then it becomes a problem. So citing the reference of Finland, I mean, it's entirely a different nation with different things. Finland is not going to negotiate with a terrorist, right? They're not going to pardon terrorists. You're not going to see that state complicity when it comes to tackling the issue of terrorism.
So why was he sentenced if it was just mere words then?
That's why I'm saying that the rules of the game changes. So in the case of Nigeria, right, our law has been such that you can negotiate with terrorists, right? So I do not agree that Mazen Nnamdi Kanu is a terrorist. Rather, he is an agitator. He's somebody fighting. We must not throw away, right, the baby with the bathing water. I mean, we must not throw away the bathing water alongside with the baby, right? I mean, he has something that led to this, and all of those social issues he was trying to, draw the attention of the nation. Nobody's looking at those things, right? Now, all of it has now been forgotten. Now, what people are not looking at for is the ways and mannerism, which I do not agree that is the best way it would have gone. I mean, severally I've said that the approach would have been very different, right? But come to understand that when it comes to, presenting your matter, even at the level of families, there are times maybe a wife may shut out the husband, do some kind of crazy things, and you have to bring her on the table of dialogue. All she's just trying to say is that I deserve to be heard. And I think Mazen Nnamdi Kanu deserve to be heard, right? There should have been that political solution of negotiating, finding out, because for instance, for myself to come up and say, okay, the cause that is fighting, we deserve to, and as a region, we are not placed. It's not a matter of tribalism. It's a matter that I understand that due to the sensationalism associated with this, people tend to forget what really leads to this. Is there marginalization in Nigeria? Clearly there is. Empirically, there is. When last did an Igbo man even get close to becoming a president? When likely next is an Igbo man likely going to get there, right? And the same thing also all across the length and breadth of our Nigeria civil service. So what are we talking about? Right?
Okay.
The marginalization is real.
All right.
The marginalization is real.
Okay, let's bring in the legal luminary here, Mr. Ekene. And I'd like to ask you about some of the legalities in this case. One of the things that we could hear Mazi Nnamdi Kanu speaking and agitating against is the fact that he wasn't allowed to file his written address, and they've called this a miscarriage of justice. Can you shed some more light on this, and if you think that this will be a factor that will be raised in the appeal?
Yes, thank you. Fundamentally, the right to fair hearing is a constitutional right guaranteed in our constitution, and then also international instruments and treaties guarantee the right to fair hearing. And it's very fundamental to examine the viability, if you like, or the soundness of the judgment, considering the process that a party, in this case a defendant, raising such issue. Because I referenced fair hearing, a situation where a defendant is expected to address the court and is denied that opportunity, it goes down to the issue of fair hearing. But whether in the circumstance that avails or that's available to Nnamdi Kanu will depend on the procedure, or let me probably put this clear. In criminal trial, there are options for a defendant when the prosecution closes its case. So some of these options may probably shut you out of the opportunity to address the court, whether you call it a closing address or a final written address. And I heard Nnamdi Kanu making a strong point at that he hasn't been given the opportunity to file his final written address and to address the court on issues of law. But I didn't know what option he chose when a defendant is opening his case. When the prosecution closes, the defendant has the option to rely on the case of the prosecution. And in that case, you're telling the court that I'm not putting up a defense. What the prosecution has said is not strong enough to inculpate me or to find me guilty of this. Make your judgment on what the prosecution has said. You have an option also to enter a no-case submission. You have an option also to put up a defense strongly and call your witnesses. Now, when do you need or when do you have the right to address the court? Where you elect to put up a defense. And as a defendant, you call witnesses. Your witnesses will be examined by you if you're representing yourself in chief, or if you're represented by a lawyer, same way in chief. The other party will cross-examine your witnesses. And if you have any reason to re-examine, that's the procedure, then you re-examine. At the end of your case as the defendant, when you call witnesses and you did this, you presented evidence, then you will have the right to address the court. But generally, that right to address the court is a fundamental right. If it is denied, then of course you deny that defendant the right to fair hearing. But like I said, the option that Nnamdi Kanu, I'm afraid here that I just heard even while we're on this program, that he elected to rely on the case of the prosecution. I wonder whether he still had the right to address the courts by way of final written address or final address in any case. But like I said, the other options where he would have had that right, if he was denied that right, then it's a fundamental ground for appeal. And any issue or any matter that borders on fundamental right of fair hearing forms even a strong ground for appeal. Having said that, let me quickly please state a few things in response to what the perceptions seem to have come through. That one person goes maybe free, if you put in quotes, does not mean that the act of that person, if it is all.
Okay. It would seem that there's also been some form of network interruption there with Mr. Ikine, and we hope that we can reconnect with him and have this case sorted. I mean, have him land on his thoughts and then maybe ask him further questions. But we'll now take the conversation to Mr. Okenwa. And
is he back?
Is Mr. Okenwa back? All right. All right.
Mr. Ikine is back.
Okay, Mr. Ikine is back. Yeah, go ahead.
Please go ahead with your thoughts.
Mr. Ikine, you can land on your thought.
Okay, thank you very much. So I was making a point based on the perception, and some arguments I've listened and heard, that why wasn't this person charged for terrorism or treason and tried and convicted? Why the other person? And again, another argument of perception about Mayor was the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act unfortunately, let our viewers here make statements that can evoke violence, acts of terrorism. So the argument as to why would somebody be tried on Mayor was Section 2, subsection 3 of the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act states clearly what Terrorism Act in our law would be, and it will include propagation and dissemination of information or information materials in any form or mode that is calculated to cause panic, evoke violence, or intimidate a government, a person, or group of persons. If this is the situation, then you cannot distinguish between one dissemination of information and another, especially where it evokes violence and panic and intimidates people, even if it is a statement, especially being made as a broadcast. I'm afraid I have to say this. The purpose for our analysis is that our laws should be upheld and we learn from the mistakes of others. There may be other areas where Nnamdi Kanu may have a strong ground on appeal, but at the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act, Section 2, subsection 3, that defines acts of terrorism in this country, be careful what you say and what information you disseminate, what information you propagate, what it carries. This is very important on the part of the law for our viewers to understand and for Nigerians to be careful. The right to self-determination as protected under international instruments and even the African Charter on Human and People's Rights that we have domesticated, as some also argue, it does not also mean that that right is completely absolute. We say in the human rights movement that where your right ends is where another man's right begins. So while you have a right to self-determination, I've argued this when we are analyzing some of this Nnamdi Kanu's matter earlier, there should be a reasonable and responsible and legal way to exercise the right to self-determination. I am an agitator. I am from the Niger Delta. I'm a desire that we have a Republic of the Niger Delta, for instance, with our clear subjugation and marginalization, economic and otherwise, even political marginalization as well. But will we propagate information to the extent that it will evoke violence, panic, and probably even those information actually being acted upon? These are the things we have to be careful about as a country. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Kenneth, I think you've made a very strong point, which many need to really understand why that judgment was equally made in terms of passing out and dishing out information, which of course solicited or brought about violence. I hope we can get the graphics on the screen as well, so we can itemize this, as I'm about to ask my next question to Mr. Okenwa. But Mr. Okenwa, you just heard the lawyer there who has spoken about some of these things. And reading from the Terrorism Act, we would all agree that some of these statements that were made via the Radio Biafra were statements that were inciting a lot of persons into acts of violence. And you also have joined this program where we've talked about sit at home on Mondays. People have complained, our reporters have talked about those who decided to defy the laws, how they were dealt with, beaten, and so on. But in line with this, let me come to you, Mr. Okinwa. For those who have been agitating, someone had put out a tweet, which we looked at this morning. I just want to take a context out of that tweet, two actually, and I'm hoping we can get that tweet up there on the screen from the chief priest. I'm sure it's someone, he's someone you know as well, a celebrity like they call him. He did mention, he said, he talked about two things I want to highlight and I want you to answer. One of it has to do with politics ahead of 2027, where he has equally told the current administration, directing to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that he shouldn't expect to get a good number of votes because of the court's decision concerning Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. And then secondly, he also mentioned that he is the supreme leader. I'd like to get your opinion on this. Is Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, MNK as rightly called, is he the supreme leader of the Southeast? And will his sentencing affect the 2027 elections? And do you think people in the Southeast will galvanize and move to vote for the current administration again?
Nnamdi Kanu is not the supreme leader of the Southeast. And secondly, one of the things I want to say, which is very important, I mean, he's got no political position or religious position. I think the position that he took that made him very popular in the Southeast is the fact that some of the front burner issues, you know, that was always in his mouth, aside from maybe like threats of violence, were issues, you know, that were very germane to the Southeast. So some of us, like, I do not support like some of the, you know, most of the methods that he deployed. And I've always said that, you know, clearly without missing words. So it's not a case of blind support. But I also think that, you know, what made him very popular is that, you know, he spoke to issues, you know, that affect the Southeast. So having said that, whether, Bola Ahmed Tinubu will get up to 10,000 bodies, quite very little now. Now, Southeast is more of APC, right? You have more APC states, and those governors also would like to like work for Mr. President, right? You know, but whatever be the case, I think what is even to be of greater concern to all parts of Nigeria is the very fact that, you know, the Southeast has been complaining, right? There has been that marginalization after the Civil War, right? It seems as if to say like, you know, for some people, the war should just continue, right? You hear some comments on Moibo this and that, and, you know, all kinds of things, or Yamiri, some kind of denigrating terms of language. Like I tell you, like, I mean, earlier this year when I went to a program, right, that was through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, a program with organized by the Chinese government, and somebody, a Yoruba lady there, we have five Nigerians, right? When someone was commending me as the leader, the class manager of a group of 30 that came from 10 nations, and you know what the lady said, like on an international scene, that people from my area are fraudsters. You can imagine that. Can you imagine that kind of hatred that your fellow compatriot was being commended? So I think we need to look within. The core we are saying is that the Southeast in many cases is not fairly treated. Two, there's a need to get to the table and address those issues, right? That's the major thing that led to agitation by Nnamdi Kanu, right? Every other thing is like about violence. Look at the bigger thing. Don't forget the bigger thing. It's just like if somebody's, you know, like the instance I used before, right? Somebody utilize or deployed violence or threats by the virtue of an issue the person is negotiating and saying, I'm not fairly treated. At the end of the day, you are punishing the person for fighting, and you are not even talking about like what issue the person was raising, what were the things that led to that fight. That is the way to address them, because at the end of the day, a nation is a family. So if you are telling me, oh, he said this happened and all the rest of it, since the time they held him and he's not been saying, are there no threats of that? Are we not even seeing like how many killings have happened this week? Are we also going to blame that on Nnamdi Kanu? And why don't you catch those that maybe by statements or even by their actions has led to what you see? Catch them, deal with them. That's what it means a lawful nation, not a nation where the general can be killed, anything happen, right? And then everybody just sitting and then it's now the counter is the problem of Nigeria. I don't think that is fair enough.
Thank you, Chukwuma. I'd like to bring Mr. Ekene into the picture. Let's discuss what the law says. Chukwuma says Nnamdi Kanu's words in the course of our conversation are mere words, and there's no correlation that those words have led to actions. He also said we should focus on the bigger picture of the marginalization of the people from the eastern region of the country. But how does the law think in terms of prosecution? Because he said statements, what Mr. Chukwuma describes as mere words, Lagos should be in flames, set the airport on fire, set it ablaze right now. If you have a double barrel and guns, give it to them and kill everybody. How many police died? How many did you kill? Those were his words. How does the law operate in this context?
Thank you. In every crime, even in the substantive laws, substantive criminal laws, including the Criminal Code Act and in states in Criminal Code law, and of course here the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act and other criminal law, substantive laws, would always consider the actions of different persons that led to the commission of a crime. Under Section 7, I believe, of the Criminal Code Act, there is a definition of parties to a crime. So everybody needs to be very careful one role or another that you play. And then when an allegation of commission of a crime is being prosecuted and the roles you play, you can actually be a party of a crime, even when you're not the one that wielded the club that probably was descended on the head, on the skull of a victim of that assault, and probably the victim dies. But if you procured that club for the person who actually used it and then brought it down on the skull of the deceased, you were part of it. Or if some of you sat at some point with a common purpose to commit this offense and agreed to carry out this unlawful act, you are conspirators. So if you ask how the law looks at these things, and that's why sometimes those who don't understand will imagine that, oh, he said this, but it wasn't probably in the southeast where some of these violent behaviors were carried out. But where you instigated violence, I am not putting this in context on Nnamdi Kanu. It's the general analysis I'm making place. Now, when you stay elsewhere, and remember the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act make it culpable or an offense, whether that offense is committed in Nigeria or elsewhere. So that even the argument of some of those who say the broadcast was outside Nigeria, it doesn't hold water when it comes to the Prevention Act, the Terrorism Act. Whether directly or indirectly, whether within Nigeria or outside Nigeria, if that conduct of that person falls within one of those provisions, definitions of Terrorism Act, is Terrorism Act. Terrorism is a global menace that is fought based on international instruments. So back to the way the law, the courts look at these laws. So that's the point where, for instance, I am a leader of an organization or a group, whether I intended the actual killing of some individuals, but my followers and adherents, and they reference me, and they come out clean to say they identify with my group and with my philosophy and ideology, which is part of what the Terrorism Act talks about. And I disseminate information so strongly in that direction and cause them to cause panic, violence, actual violence, even if I'm elsewhere. But I'm saying this, our organization, if you see any person whose head is in a particular shape, kill him. And then there are situations where persons who has that shape of head were being killed by a person who agree that they are members of my organization and they are carrying out that my information. The courts will ask you questions. The court is likely to hold you culpable, you and any of those persons who actually carried out that action. And that was why earlier than this time, Some of us had actually expressed our concern and worries when people were celebrating. At some point, if I even get into public taxis and buses, and then the way a certain radio was being tuned on by people who were so celebrating this radio and the broadcasters in this radio, and the messages that are going on, and it emboldened people across even beyond the southeast, even down here in the south. There are people who so religiously subscribe to that without questioning, habitually, without questioning. The man became a charismatic leader of a sort. So for me, I was worried at the time. Again, please, I am not justifying the judgment of Omotosho that it is completely right in all regards. It is appealable, and then it is within the right of the defendant and now the convict to appeal against the judgment in the areas they consider reasonable grounds within the law to appeal against that judgment. Sometimes appeals may not be necessarily about the substance or the merit of the allegation, but even procedure can bring down a judgment if the defendant's counsel considers certain default in.
We'll just go on a very short break. We'll come back to continue the conversation with Mr. Okenwa and Mr. Ekene. We're still looking at Nnamdi Kanu, the life sentence judgment meted out to him, the reaction of Ndigbo, the rest of Nigeria, the legality or otherwise of this, and more. And you can be a part of the conversation by dropping your comment in our chat box on YouTube. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Breakfast Central. We're still x-raying the judgment passed down to Nnamdi Kanu and the reactions that have come thereafter. We're joined this morning by the Executive Director of Lead Network Africa, Chukwuma Okenwa, and the National Legal Advisor, Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, Henry Ekene. Gentlemen, once again, thank you for staying with us on the show. I'll come back to, before I come to Mr. Okenwa, I'd like to ask Mr. Ekene, do you think that having representation would have maybe impacted the way this case would have gone, and that Nnamdi Kanu choosing to represent himself has also maybe led to where we are with this judgment?
As much as the Constitution guarantees the right to a defendant to either represent himself and, of course, all other legal instruments, to represent himself or be represented by a legal practitioner, yes, is within his choice to so elect to represent himself. Then again, I would imagine and believe that perhaps his legal team and himself may have considered whatever tact it was that he should stand to defend himself. But I would imagine that perhaps he was getting some legal advice behind the scene. But not because I'm probably trying to promote the legal profession, but I imagine that in certain cases, especially in criminal matters are entirely different from civil matters. I would have imagined, and I think if I had a way, let a legal practitioner who is experienced in criminal defense and in such capital charge, or if you like, so serious a charge that you're standing trial. It wasn't drama. It's not a joke. It's not activism. Even if I'm an activist as it is now, it's not about activism. It's not about being outspoken. But there is a skill, there is an art in presenting your case before the court. Even if the court is going to pervert justice, even if the court is going to be biased, but make a strong, credible, and if you like, almost an indomitable presentation of your case, and leave the judge to commit some error of fact or law that you may have grounds to appeal. I am not completely saying that Nnamdi Kanu probably didn't consider the chances of his representing himself or being represented by his counsel. But I think I would have preferred a situation where in this kind of charge, terrorism, and also knowing how it's gone through the political, maybe like trial, the way his matter has been, I didn't see the advantage of wanting or electing to defend himself. But that's also not to say that that's the reason the judgment went the way it went. It's about the reliance of the court on the weight of the evidence and, of course, the credibility as the court perceived of the evidence of the prosecution against the defendant. And in this case, as I heard in this discussion on this program, that the defendant elected to rely on the case of the prosecution is a dangerous option for the defense. Relying on the case of the prosecution is a very dangerous option for the defense in any criminal trial. It is even better to enter a no-case submission, where if the ruling is such that the court disagrees with you and then holds that there is a defense, there is a reason for you to defend, of course, you'll be given the opportunity. But when you elect to rely on the case of the prosecution, I'm still a lawyer and is learning, but I wonder whether you have much opportunity to do otherwise than the way the court would have perceived the case of the prosecution as presented. If the court agrees with the prosecution, then of course you have said that rely on the case of the prosecution. So I think that's my personal view, really.
Okay. Let's still talk now, looking at the broader picture of insecurity that has become a top conversation. Yesterday, we saw live the U.S. Congress hearing on Nigeria's state of insecurity. We're going to play a clip from it, and then when we come back, we'll move to you, Mr. Okenwa, and get your reactions to some of the submissions made at the hearing. But let's play this video.
Real story here for me, and so the real story here for me is not about Nigeria's intent at the institutional level to persecute people based on faith. Instead, it's really an issue of capacity. The Nigerian government lacks the means to protect communities against groups that kill indiscriminately.
It's important to engage deeply and broadly with communities across Nigeria. The U.S. can play a constructive role, but it must avoid selective intervention and address the concerns of all Nigerians across all religions to prevent worsening sectarian divisions. 2, it's important to rethink reactive quick-win actions that may seem beneficial to Nigerians, but could have larger and far-reaching negative impacts. If the Trump administration proceeds with unilateral military action in Nigeria, it could endanger the Christians it aims to protect and worsens divisions along religious lines. 3rd, prioritize security governance to help tackle the violence. The U.S. should reassess its security cooperation with Nigeria.
And these are live clips, or some excerpts rather, from the U.S. Congress hearing on the Nigeria state of insecurity. Mr. Okenwa, let's get your thoughts on this. We have another video, I don't know if we have it ready, of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's case being mentioned at the Congress hearing, and that was also brought up. But let's get your thoughts, Mr. Okenwa, as to what your concerns are. Do you think that with the U.S. having constantly had conversations about potentially invading Nigeria in the past weeks, that this judgment that has been given to Nnamdi Kanu might in some measure fuel the, the agitations, or might add to the conversation being had outside the country?
Certainly, and I think I'm always not comfortable with the word U.S. invasion of Nigeria. U.S. has clearly stated they want to target the terrorists, right? And I mean, how would that translate to invasion? So if there's any way they could take away the terrorists, those active guys terrorizing the nation, creating visibly the insecurity that we see, then everybody should be happy for that. But beyond that, I mean, one issue that was mentioned yesterday in the U.S. Congress is the fact there was that extraordinary rendition, which has been an issue, whether even the court in Nigeria has that jurisdiction to actually try him, on criminal grounds, considering the mannerism which was brought back to the country. Well, it's left to the appellate court. I'm sure that's the next destination, to really reinterpret this, because if the platform is wrong, then everything placed on it will be wrong. You can't place nothing upon nothing and expect it to stand.
Yes, you've said there that you cannot put something up on top of nothing and expect it to stand. Let's also get, Mr. Okenwa, your thoughts about the reaction. Do you think that the Igbo leaders, right, the Igbo leaders, Southeastern leaders, prominent figures in the Southeast have handled or reacted to this matter regarding Nnamdi Kanu in the way that you expected? Or would you say that you expected a different level of reaction or participation? Mr. Okenwa, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
So in time past, we've seen like political leaders reaching out to Mr. President. It shouldn't be a one-off approach. We want to see more engagement now, right? It should be strategic. It should be sustained. And with that, I'm sure that we are going to achieve results. Now we have, 3 states of the Southeast now are APC, right? They could leverage on their alliance with the center to negotiate further. We have more legislators now at the national level in the Southeast from APC. So we want to see more engagement, and they should secure the release. Then every other issue can now be looked at. Because like we heard from the U.S. Congress, if Trump is thinking of like a military intervention, also consider so that in the course of trying to, you don't also endanger the Christians you are trying to protect, and you have to like understand, the unique composition of that nation, the diversity, managing the diversity. And so if the judgment also is to be given in a nation like this on certain issues, looking at it holistically. And let me say something which is very important and will help us. Recall that when the issue of insecurity started in the Southeast, what was this first Christian? Unknown gunmen. And in some cases, some state operatives were linked up to an attack, right? When they were held back. Unknown gunmen. Whoever chose that narrative, I think it was diversionary. And the next thing that now led to the escalation was the Onitsha protest, which we saw like military intervention, killing lots of people. You could remember Operation Crocodile Dance. You could remember it was after that that everything changed in the Southeast. We must not forget to look at the historical perspective of how insecurity started in the Southeast. Southeast has always been known to be the most peaceful region. And I can tell you that insecurity in Nigeria, in the Southeast, was largely created, by some people who feel this region should not be at rest, linking it up entirely that Nnamdi Kanu is the causation for that. I don't think I would entirely want to agree with that, because we grew up here, we love our people, we understand where he's gone wrong and what he's trying to do. And most importantly, we think that Nigerian government can do better. Look at the bigger issues and not to be looking at, other issues that are associated with the main issue.
I'd like to bring Barrister Ekene into the conversation. My question to you is, don't you find it quite ironic and troubling that the United States Congress seems to be of more particular interest in Nigeria's security matters than our own 10th National Assembly? The other day, Senate President Godswill Akpabio said, "Who am I to speak against President Trump?" What sort of message does this send? You could see the hearing, you could hear the testimony from victims of violent extremist groups all the way in the United States, and back home, it's almost as if it's business as usual, not a care in the world. Just yesterday, Mr. President gave the marching order to Bello Matawale Alhaji, the Minister of Defense, that he should move to Kebbi State, and he needs to relocate to Kebbi State to make sure those girls are secured. Are you impressed with that directive also?
Yes, thank you. Let me start with with what I consider as an exposure of the rather weakness and unfortunate assembly of persons who do not seem to understand what their roles really are in the form of the National Assembly of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And that was its exposure. It took a congressional hearing of the United States Congress to be discussing matters that affect lives in Nigeria, that even here on this platform, you are there as the anchor with your colleagues, and then my colleague and I are here as analysts, and we're discussing this very sensitive and important issue arising from a congressional hearing in the US. That's, for me, an unfortunate and embarrassing situation in the National Assembly. Even as we speak, not even in pretense has the National Assembly considered deliberately, specifically, for this matter to sit as either a committee of the whole or a particular committee or even in plenary to discuss in real terms these issues, as if they haven't heard, as if life is not important. Rather, we are here and in different sections, some are within us and amongst our citizens. Some Nigerians are arguing for and against genocide or any intentional killings in parts of Nigeria. So, like you may imagine, by putting this question, I think it's quite unfortunate. It's embarrassing to the National Assembly. The president of the Senate, who is the chairman of the National Assembly, together with the Speaker of the House of Representatives, I think they need to cure this embarrassment by immediately, even if right now some persons will, oh, it is late, oh, it's a pretense, it is better that they pretend. And let us rather see the outcome. Convoke a deliberate, conscious, and real, determined conversation at that level that will involve people to discuss it. That's one. Then reference to Nnamdi Kanu's matter at the Congress also shows, for me, again, what the United States is doing in a way, as a political scientist, in a way, deepening their hold of global position as, if you like, demolishing even the bipolar, struggle to say who controls the world to a single power, seemingly police of the world. And they're doing that very nicely. Because arguably here in Nigeria, there are Nigerians who welcome that statement by the President of the United States and the commitment now by the Congress of the United States, as if they want to come solve our problems. But in a way, it's an advantage to the United States by positioning themselves as the police of the world. But that is for political interest. And that it covers everything, economics, politics, and power. But we do not seem to understand how these things play out. We have a National Assembly that we have more of comedians and people who are tired but refuse to retire even after working in their private lives, becoming governors for 8 years, and you just want to continue to work on because the Constitution allows for the legislature no end to their election. That's unfortunate. Then on asking about, okay, what the president may have directed the Minister for State for Defense to relocate. So we have had things even during Goodluck Jonathan's administration. I think we had the Chief of Army Staff relocate somewhere in the south, in the northeast. What happened? It is more than that. It is more than asking where. If we interrogate more, where is Matawale going to be in Kebbi? It's probably going to be maybe in government house or in one luxury hotel, and probably just staying there. It's another opportunity to just travel there. That, for me, is not what a commander-in-chief of the armed forces we need to direct. It's not the minister for state. It's just like asking the secretary for defense in the United States, perhaps. Where is the military? How I have said the other time, even when the case of River State happened, the unfortunate unconstitutional declaration of state of emergency. I said, if you felt that there is some serious insecurity in River State, and then there should be state of emergency, how much did you deploy security personnel, hardware, software, votes, National Assembly discussion in terms of funding for security in real terms? We just had the National Assembly suggesting to the president to recruit about 100,000, if I'm not mistaken, the figure of military personnel. Is it now we are waking up to this realization? So directing the Minister for State for Defense to go to Kebbi State to do what? To go to the fringes of the forest to bring the girls, unfortunately the students, or asking the military and giving them a task to say within 3 days, if you do not bring these people, this will happen. As a commander-in-chief of the armed forces, is a failure himself. That's been my position with this unfortunate invasion of schools. Are we going to be forced to shut down our schools in any part of Nigeria?
Well, just to mention,
what would that say about education and human capital development and even moving forward in Nigeria?
All right. Well, just to mention that some schools have been asked to shut down in Kwara State. I mean, the governor said let them see how they can avoid further instances as well. But let's go back to the United States. Let's see what they also had to say about the current issues before we wrap up this conversation.
The detention of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is a clear example. In 2022, Nigeria's Court of Appeal struck down the charges against him and ordered his release. The UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention has also called for his unconditional release. Yet he remains in solitary confinement, in deteriorating health, and recently had to represent himself in court. Nigeria has signaled that the law is optional and targeting Christians is fair game. Just hours ago this morning, despite the pleas and cries of the Nigerian people and many Nigerian lawmakers, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu was convicted on all charges. For fiscal year 2025, the U.S. has requested nearly $8 billion for sub-Saharan Africa. But when Americans see political prisoners, judicial defiance, and the slaughter of Christians, they understandably ask as they meet their own struggles, why should our tax dollars support governments that refuse to protect their own people? Is our aid aiding a genocide? Nigeria is a nation of tremendous potential, but that potential is being choked out by violent persecution of its Christian population. No country can build a stable future where churches are burned, believers are killed, and communities live in fear.
All right, so that's just a little bit of what went down yesterday concerning Nnamdi Kanu's statement, especially the justice system that found him, wanting and then gave that judgment. But then again, yesterday there were a lot of conversations around Nigeria's genocide, insecurity, and you would wonder why Nnamdi Kanu would not also be mentioned. That's why he was mentioned, by the way. But U.S. Congressman Bill Huizenga actually said that the current administration, the government, is not doing enough. I just want to take this to Henry as we wrap up this conversation. I want to find out your thoughts before I come back to... We'll hear from
Henry and then
yes. Then I also want to hear from Okenwa. Just this question. In the north, you've seen bandits, terrorists being welcomed. We've seen them having peace meetings, peace deals with weapons. None of them has been arrested or tried. But when you come down to this particular case, we see that it's a different one. We also had an agitator during the late President Muhammadu Buhari's administration by the name Sunday Igboho, and we know what happened, how he had fled the country, eventually has been pardoned, came back, and he's all well and good. But then again, do you think that the justice system is failing? That's my question to you, Mr. Henry. I also like your response as well, Chukwuma. But let's start with Henry first.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very quickly, I agree with Chukwuma, and that's been my position too, that there appears to be varied standards in handling these issues by the Nigerian state. Very quickly referencing Sunday Igboho. It is the same thing. He issued information, disseminated information, and actually acted. Sometimes, somewhere in your state, towards Ibarakwa area and all that. There were killings and attacks of probably herdsmen and then his own group of persons. Persons died, but the end is what you have just stated. He traveled, however, the system was manipulated, and then he came back, issues of pardon, probably a streamer. So it is true, no doubt, that there is a reasonable argument that appears to be different standards in handling these issues. Look at the negotiations in the Northeast. I don't need to emphasize that. But what the Congress said also about the Nigerian state not doing enough, apparently that's the situation. Every one of us here, except we are pretending, it's only the politicians who are probably in support of government and cowed in that regard, not wanting to say otherwise just because they don't want to lose their jobs, that will say otherwise. Otherwise, there is nothing, absolutely nothing that the Nigerian government, Nigerian state is doing to protect citizens. The right of citizens to life is worse in Nigeria than anywhere in the world. In the human rights movement, the CDHR, we have taken stock when we analyze the state of the nation that there are a lot of there are persons who are displaced, there are persons who are missing persons in Nigeria that are not reported. Before we even talk about the number of persons that have been killed, each time there are these attacks in these communities, what we hear is only about the number of persons that have been killed. What about persons that are missing? That probably they ran out, probably thinking they are going to get into some safety, but ran into some death and all that, and they are not accounted for. So a lot of all these things, we cannot end this discussion at all if we are to discuss the failure of the Nigerian state with respect to securing citizens. All right. Then again, what can we possibly do? What can we possibly do? I think the Nigerian people, we need to stand up, we need to speak up, we need to continue to engage the state, remind them that the primary responsibility of government is to continue to enhance the security of life and property and enhance our welfare, which they have failed. And we have to really make that very strongly without being afraid of any reaction by the states. All right, much more to say, but thank you. Yeah, I'll leave it at this point.
All right, before Mr. Okenwa responds to the same question that was posed to you, I want you to look at it from another perspective, looking at our National Assembly. We are seeing the U.S. Congress sitting and discussing our insecurity issues. Here in Nigeria, I mean, I read an article written by The Guardian, an op-ed sometime in May, that it said the Senate and its ceremonial solution to insecurity. And we were talking about how the Senate said they will have a 2-day retreat or talk shop or conference to discuss Nigeria's insecurity challenges. How would you say, first of all, that our National Assembly has fared in terms of dealing with insecurity? Whilst they can't expressly get into the battlefield, but they can wield legislative instruments in that regard. So how would you say they have fared, and what are your expectations from our National Assembly? Ms. Okenwa, I posed that question to you. If you can please respond.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I get it. So basically, a National Assembly that has turned itself into a rubber stamp of the executive cannot be able to wield this level of responsibility you are talking about. Because for them to matter in national polity, it has to be a National Assembly that is able to play oversight function over the executive, that is able to call the executive to order. All we've seen, including the unfortunate declaration of state of emergency in Rivers State, and all manner of executive and administrative recklessness we've seen this current assembly endorse. You cannot expect any good thing from a National Assembly that has refused to play its constitutional role. And until we can visibly see that independence, that capacity, right, that sagacity from the National Assembly, you can't expect, that they are going to add anything beyond what they are doing. And I am afraid that over the time, the lines between the executive arm, legislative arm, and judiciary, keep getting thin and thin. It's as if to say what we have at the moment is Trinity and not three arms of government. And, one of the things we fear recently happened in Nigeria where we saw like on your mandate we shall stand being played, and there was no resistance anywhere. I mean, all the judges stood up to the new national anthem, you know, of on your mandate. Things like this should not be happening. One of the things we expected is like massive walkout, show independence of different arms, and with that it will no longer just be whatever thing the executive wants. Then of course they will get the endorsement from both the legislative arm and judiciary. What we currently see now is that there's a lot of political interference, even in judicial matters, and I think that should never be the case. Like we see even building of houses by the executive through the FG, through the Minister of FCT. This should not be the case.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for answering that question. We have one more video to play, and then we'll wrap up this conversation. It was an interview, where they were talking about the numbers of Christians, that were killed, and they were asking the Minister of Foreign Affairs to defend that or to explain further. But let's take a look at this video.
We in Nigeria have Christians, we have Muslims, we have atheists, we have animists, and when we're counting death tolls, we don't necessarily go by religion, and quite often it's difficult to even identify what religion an individual that has just lost their lives belongs to. And what we are concerned about is that they are Nigerians first and foremost. I said, the lady and people like her trade in.
You dispute the numbers of Christians that have been reported to have been killed, but you have no idea how many Christians have been killed. What we surely can agree on is how many Christian churches have been destroyed. Do you know how many?
Yes, I do. Over the last 2 years, there have been 52 churches, depending on which region, again, you are referring to, because there are different regions in Nigeria, and there are, I can give you the figures right here now. So,
well, how many since 2009?
Since 2009, since the last 5 years, the attacks, not destroyed, attacks on churches, 102. So we're not hiding any figures, you see. It's important to understand this. Same way that there are mosques that are destroyed. I don't even have to mention that. Nigeria is configured in such a way that you have Muslim and Christian populations all across the country. There are, of course, states out of the 36 states that we have that have a high concentration.
Barrister Ekine, I see you shaking your head there, and you probably have good reason to. The Nigerian government, ever since President Trump threatened to go guns a-blazing, has been scrambling, ministers and spokespersons. They've been doing media engagements with international media. And the president, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, Federal Republic of Nigeria, is yet to directly face the camera and address Nigerians. Are you satisfied with the government's handling of this unprecedented time when a foreign country is threatening to invade us if we don't get our acts in order?
But before you respond, let's go on a very, very quick break, and when we come back, we'll take your thoughts.
You're welcome back to Breakfast Central. You're welcome back to Breakfast Central. And to conclude our conversation here, we've been discussing Nnamdi Kanu versus the federal government versus Nnamdi Kanu and other matters bordering on insecurity in the country. We have two amazing guests who's been with us for the last about an hour. My question to you before we went on the break, Barrister Ekene, is: are you satisfied with the reaction of the Nigerian government to the labeling of Nigeria as a country of particular concern? And does the president deserve some kudos for aborting his planned trip to South Africa G20 summit and the African Union summit in Luanda, Angola?
I'm not satisfied at all. And then it shows how incoherent even the responses of let's say ministers or representatives of the state. Imagine, look at what we are watching. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, that's in the like of the Secretary of State in the United States. And so incoherent and being rather defensive. What stops the Nigerian state to simply say there's a matter that is in context? It's specific. The United States, it's definite that there are incidences of killings of Christians and attacks on churches. Why not respond to say, oh yes, this is it, and this is what we are doing. And we also have condemned it. The persons who are doing this are criminal elements. It's not a deliberate policy of state. But you're there talking about, oh, it's not just churches that are being burned. There are probably mosques are also being attacked. And then not just Christians that are being killed. There are killings across the country. That for me is pedestrian. And then it's also not a very responsible response to that kind of question. Again, Mr. President, you asked, haven't said anything himself directly. Unfortunately, somewhere, Joe is speaking through the Minister of Foreign Affairs or perhaps other representatives of government, but not at this level. When the president, your colleague, a president of another country, has issued and made a statement, he didn't issue that or make that statement through the Secretary of State or any minister in that regard, and then there isn't a response. That shows for me there are two things that are very defective in the Tinubu's administration: politics and foreign affairs. And I do know at some point, perhaps just to say here, as a scholar of international politics and foreign policy, we do not seem to even have a definition of our objective, really, clearly, of Nigerian foreign policy direction. And that is why you could have a government, and for long, you do not even have representatives, real time, of the Nigerian state in other nations. I wonder even what our foreign policy objective really is anymore in Nigeria. What is the direction? What shapes our foreign policy and our relation? We do not seem to have any such definition anymore. So the government has not handled this matter properly. The government has not shown any defense of the interests of the people. It doesn't matter whether the reference is to Christians and churches. And so, if they are Christians and churches, are they Nigerians? Defend the people. It doesn't matter whether it is reference to a particular sect. Until the question comes again for the other sect, you defend them. But you don't be defensive of those who are alleged to even be perpetrating this evil against another group of your citizens. So the government has not handled. In fact, Mr. President appears for me not even having any idea of what to do. And that's why he hasn't taken a step. Sometimes let us be very, let's take these things out. A person sometimes does not take a step because he doesn't know what step to take. Mr. President is bereaved. He does not know what step to take in this direction. It doesn't even come only on the flank of the statement of Mr. President of the United States of America or the American Congress. Even back here at home, the president is completely out of tune as to what to do to address insecurity in Nigeria. And that's why we haven't succeeded in any pinch of it. Then the representatives of the states, clearly, even the video we just watched, the Minister for Foreign Affairs is completely incoherent. And the same way, every representative of government that has made one defense or the other back here at home on our own media has made no concrete, coherent representation in response to all of these issues. The National Assembly has not even spoken at all. And I do not even expect, like I said, that Mr. President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, what exactly will Godswill Akpabio give in this regard? You can't give what you don't have. What analysis? What in-depth knowledge or understanding does he even have in this with respect to him? We know ourselves. We should state these things as they are. So when you see our leaders not even acting in the ways that are expected to be acted by any person elsewhere, it's because they also do not know what to do. Compare this to Burkina Faso. Even if they are trending in social media at all times, what has been the response of that young man to statements by France, by the United States, or any states in that regard, with respect to the handling of his affairs in Burkina Faso? He's firm, he's determined, he's clear with his position, he's clear with his response, he's frontal with his response.
All right. Okay.
That is less of what in the case of Nigeria. So they haven't handled it anywhere near what is expected of a state as Nigeria in the community of states in this world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akine. We're out of time. Let's quickly get your final thoughts, Mr. Okenwa, as we wrap up this conversation.
Well, I align myself completely, and let me join my colleague to lend a voice that there's need to, have core representatives of our foreign policy in all the nations where we have our high commissions and, embassies, for 2 years now. No ambassador sent, and it's not a good strategy. It doesn't show how much we prioritize our foreign policy objectives. So I think the president should look into that.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for filing in your closing address. We have enjoyed having a great conversation with you, but we know that this is still a developing story, and as we get more information, we'll look to having another conversation with you. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And as we wrap up this conversation, on YouTube, we can see comments from Mokunye Chukwuemeka says, unfortunately, the law is different for different parts of the country. Jeffrey Williams says, this country is biased and has Igbophobia and a long-term dislike for Igbo. Anyway, we see Annie Chinedu who says, our judiciary has crumbled. Imagine James Omotosho invoking American and British sentiment against Nnamdi Kanu's conduct to rationalize his predetermined judgment. There's a number of comments there. We'll take more as we proceed with the show, but for now, we'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have our next conversation.
All right. But let's also tell you that when we come back, we'll take a look at a developing story. Bandits have reportedly abducted students, another one, and staff from St. Mary's School in Papiri.
It's so scary.
This is quite different from the one we're trying to salvage now. 25 students we do here to escape, so maybe 23 or thereabout. But this is a fresh and developing story. We do have someone who has been in the middle of it and has been covering this report. When we come back after the break, we'll take a look at this developing story. Stay with us.
Now you know that.
So I think he has resigned from that.
Good morning.
Has he responded to her?
Can you hear us?
I responded and said, this is not a kind comment.
Good.
She now said, I'm just joking. He's aware I'm joking.
Okay.
He came back to respond to say, don't mind Rukoya.
Okay.
In the
Mr.
saying that they are friends.
Ndamiso, can you hear me?
Teasing him now that he's back. And
Okay. All right. All right. We're coming to you now.
So she
Welcome back. Let's bring you another breaking news and a new report. Bandits have reportedly, this time, abducted an unspecified number of students and staff from St. Mary's School in Papiri, located in Agwara local government area of Niger State. Confirming the incident in a telephone interview, the head of disaster and relief for Agwara local government, Ahmed Abdullahi Rufai, revealed that the attackers invaded the school in the early hours of the morning between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. He noted that the exact number of abducted students and staff is yet to be determined as authorities continue to assess the situation. Now, this latest abduction comes just days after a similar attack in Maga, Kebbi State, where gunmen kidnapped 25 students from another school, raising fresh concerns over the worsening insecurity across educational institutions in the region. We do have one man who has been following this story very, very closely right from the early hours of this morning. Journalist Ibrahim Ndamitso joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Ibrahim.
Good morning.
All right. Although you look very calm, I can tell that it's been a sleepless night following this latest development. Quite sad, we must say, and unfortunate yet again. Can you bring us up to speed what really happened and what's the entire story concerning this latest abduction?
Absolutely. Nigeria has always been a very concerned territory with repeated banditry activities around the Niger North, which this local government falls into. So very early hours, bandits invaded the community in Papiri. Papiri is an Agwara local government area, and took away vehicles belonging to some locals, according to ground sources. Then went into the school, pick up kids in St. Mary, it's a missionary school, pick up kids and some of their teachers. Reports coming in shows that there are quite, young kids this time around who have been sick, and the number is yet to be ascertained. The head of the local government disaster who confirmed the incident earlier said it is not clear how many people have been taken away, but certainly that particular area is not linked to this cases of banditry. A few weeks ago, the member representing that federal constituency was also attacked, and some of his security aides were killed. He escaped, narrowly because a lot of his aides were injured. His car was badly damaged. So it's not attacks such as this. Except that schools have never been attacked in that local government, not that schools have never been attacked in Niger State.
I've signaled that we can't really hear you clearly. So yeah, a bit muffled. So I want to ask, because this is a very, very important information you're passing. Is it possible that you take off your earpiece? Possibly, so we can hear you clearly. We can't really hear you. It's a bit muffled, so we can get the information you're passing, so it can be clear. Because this, it's another one, and
very important conversation.
We really need to ensure that it's clear. So, if you don't mind, if you've done that for us, it would be nice to repeat what you just shared with us in terms of what really happened. It's mentioned that it's between 2 and 3 a.m. And we really want to know what the situation is like then, or was like then, and is like now. Can you hear us? Can you go ahead?
Yeah. Can you hear me? It's
much better.
Good. Please go ahead.
Now, Agwara local government is one local government that has been badly affected by this insecurity, particularly in recent years. It's part of the Niger North, which constitute the Kwantagora, Rijau, Mariga, Mashegu, which has been on the news with banditry activities. And that local government actually borders Kebbi State and the famous candidate National Park. Again, school kidnapping have not taken place in that local government. has never taken place. But this time around, it is happening in Papiri, which is a community, and the school is actually a missionary school with, so far, no specific number of kids who have been taken away as it is made public. But then the local government disaster officer, who is right on ground to assess the level of impact, say they are still collecting the numbers. So attacks such banditry attack is not new to Agwara. A few weeks ago, the member representing that federal constituency at the National Assembly was also attacked. Some of his aides killed, and a lot of other aides survived gun injury. So banditry attack is not new there, except that school has never been attacked there, not because schools have never been attacked in Niger State. Schools have been attacked in Niger State in 2021. Over 150 students were picked from an Islamia school, and it's the same year, very close to that place, Kagara Science School attack also took place.
Now, Ibrahim, you said the local government disaster response team has been at the scene of this another sad incident, and you've also told us that geographically Papiri is in the northern part of Niger State. Can you give us an idea of how far it is from the state capital, Minna, and if there's been any official government response from the governor, Omar Bago, or any member of the Niger State government beyond the local government level? And what's the current situation as we speak?
Absolutely. It's a scary situation for the inhabitants of that local government. You know, parents are at this point at the stage where they really do not understand what to do. The state government has not issued a statement yet, not that I am aware of. I just put a call across to some of the close aides to the governor. Again, there is no statement from the government. Again, the question of having to have the exact situation is not very near, because the distance from Minna, the state capital, to Agwara should be over 200 kilometers. Should be over. Again, you have to cross the river to get to the place if you are going through the Kwantagora axis, which is largely a security, highly security threat zone right now.
All right. Very, very sad situation there. So, new kidnapping in Niger State, new incidents of kidnapping, abduction in Niger State. Number cannot be ascertained as at this moment. The local government is aware, no information yet from the federal level, and this information is being shared and passed, and that's exactly what you've done here on this platform on Breakfast Central. Thank you so much for doing this, and we hope to hear good reports that indeed the assailants, or better still, the mischievous, you could say kidnappers or whatever it is, have actually been apprehended. Thanks for your time, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Winga, I think this is starting to look like it's a jamboree.
It's almost back to back, and there's a contagion effect, and they're inspired by something. But the federal government needs to step up. And from what we've seen and feelers, it doesn't seem the resources that should be deployed towards securing the lives of Nigerians are properly secured. You look at the incident at Wadata Plaza the other day, and by the berets of some of the mobile police force units or the policemen, security operatives that are there, you would know that they belong to this arm of the police. The Red Beret is the intelligence response team of the IG. These are tactical squads that are meant to deal with, rapid mobile squads that are meant to deal with incidents of terrorism. And you see them separating two fighting, one faction against the other at Wadata Plaza. There's a video that is making the rounds on social media. I believe one of the words of a senior government official showing off ostentatious life, using Nigerian military assets as protection, even as air cover. It just I mean, it's very sad at this point in our nationhood to witness all of that. But hopefully, and we can only pray and also advocate for the government to do what is right to secure the lives of Nigerians, wherever they're situated in this geographical space called Nigeria. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, it'll be time for the newspaper front pages. To stay with us, Breakfast Central continues shortly.
Welcome back. It's time for the newspaper front pages on a Friday, and we have our in-house analyst, and we'll also have some of our very seasoned reporters who'll be joining us all the way, not from Nigeria or from the southeast, but this time in South Africa. But first of all, allow me to introduce him before we move over to South Africa. It's good to have you join us.
Good morning.
Very own
Mr. The fashionable daddy and what girls. Mr. Bertrand John. Yeah.
You know,
he's also a veteran journalist.
Hey, veteran.
And a politician.
When you were saying allow me to introduce, I thought we were going to say allow me to introduce myself. My name is.
Oh my goodness.
You know,
Good morning, happy weekend. It's good to be here.
You know, this table does a lot of injustice for this show because
you can't see people's wonderful
appreciate their shoes.
I don't want us to talk about my little vanity, please.
What is called Batawizi. These are the kind of shoes that Whiskey used to wear to perform.
Okay. While we're talking about Batawizi, we'll come back to look at what the papers are saying. But the G20 summit is a conversation happening in South Africa. We have our correspondent, Israel Eferebo, who's looking very fresh away from the Nigerian drama. Get an update regarding the G20 summit. What's been happening there?
Hey guys, it's 9:30 a.m. here in South Africa. We are actually in Johannesburg, and this place is the media center where all journalists across the world will be coming in for details and information, and basically for the coverage of the G20. It's huge, it's big, and I just need to show you how massive this place is to give you an understanding of the sort of delegates and the sort of the magnitude of what the G20 stands for today, right now. And this is where it will be happening, and the people are beginning to trickle in and getting ready, getting set for this weekend, which will be a really, really huge one for the leaders of the G20 and indeed for the world, because there will be lots and lots of global conversations and solutions that they will be trying to get as well. So let's just quickly tell you what has happened on ground since we got into Johannesburg. Well, just yesterday we had the closing ceremony of the G20 Social Summit. It's a summit where that was put together, by the G20 by the host nation, South Africa, to ensure that everyone lend their voice to what they want the leaders to discuss, not just any sort of conversation, but conversations that will affect and impact on the people. So academic, policymakers, stakeholders, and everyone from all walks of life, even the children were also represented. They all gathered for the G20 Social Summit, and it ended yesterday with a clarion call on the leaders of the G20 when they meet this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, that their voices must be heard. They shouldn't just discuss things aloof, but it must impact on the people. That's just a bit of what has happened so far. Getting here this morning has been really tight. The security is indeed really, really tight. There were checks at every point in time, which was even why we had to come in at this time on Breakfast Central. But away from that now, some leaders are also beginning to trickle in. Bongani Sisiba here, South African correspondent, is also here to give us details on that. Bongani?
Yes, indeed. It was a very hectic for us to enter this place. Security Israel, like every stop, they are stopping us everywhere just to ask for our identification, and it's so very frustrating. But however, we are here now. As Monelo, my colleague, was showing you around how big this event is going to be. So we are at the media center where the media will be here. Just asking my colleagues, Sponelo, just to show you around. I think it will be thousands and thousands of journalists analysts that will be here because the place is so big. But however, we have seen our delegates starting to jet in South Africa. We have seen the UK Prime Minister Starmer also jetting in this morning. We saw also the Premier of China also jetting in. And also there are side meetings that President Cyril Ramaphosa have held with other delegates that came in. There was a session with the leaders for multilateral relations, such as we know that soon there will be the UNGA 80. So those are some of the discussions that the president had with some leaders. And later on, we know that the UN Secretary, that is Antonio Guterres, will have a media briefing here where we are. So we're going to hear what he's going to speak about. So it's going to be an eventful 2 days. We are hopeful that everything is going to go accordingly. But one thing that I must also mention is that as the media, we have been told that we won't be allowed to the sessions or even the opening ceremony where the leaders will be, but however we'll get it via live streaming or watching TV. So it's going to be hectic. Every media just concerned about how we are going to report on this, but I guess we're going to make it work. So Israel, about the leaders that are here, we have seen leaders. UK has already jetted, but what we know is that Jinping is going to be represented by the Premier of China. And also yesterday we heard that the US President is planning, he now have the second thoughts, especially on this G20. He had said he's not coming, but because of the declarations, he said that there shouldn't be any declarations without the US. So do you think President Trump, we're going to see last minute of President Trump?
So, well, the U.S. president is a man full of surprises. So we expect some sort of surprise. Remember, when they did say that they will not be attending, they were not individual specific. Was it the president they were talking about? Was it the fact that there will be no representative from the U.S.? We do not know. But with the kind of talks that we're hearing right now, maybe there might be some last-minute change from the U.S. Government. We have no idea. But we'll be here to get that feedback and see how this all turns out. But the big thing right now is the leaders are coming in, and the whole nation is agog for this G20 summit here at Nasrec, Johannesburg.
We are also expecting to see the representative from Russia, because we know that the Russian president has a warrant of arrest. So we are not expecting to see him here in South Africa. So he might send in a representative. But we have also seen the Brazil president. And yesterday we were expecting to see the former president of Nigeria, but it was just an empty chair. I don't know if he's around, but we'll be looking forward to that. Also, we'll be looking forward to the delegation, Nigerian delegation. Right. We understand that they will be here. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that he will support Nigeria also to join the G20, so that we have two African voices. Nigeria is one of the giant African countries here. So this kind of Israel, how important is it?
I have to interrupt at this point because we need to come back here to have the newspapers. But with subsequent bulletins, we'll be bringing you updates from the G20 summit. Thank you very much, Bongani and Israel. Very interesting to see what's happening there with all the presidents coming in, and with Donald Trump making a U-turn. Earlier in the month, he had said that it would not be, no officials from the U.S.
Well, I'm not sure he's making a U-turn.
We don't know yet. Yes. I guess in the next few hours.
And it's quite interesting because the next G20 summit will be held by the United States of America. So I wonder how they're going to do the handover. Maybe you'll send a lowly representative from the embassy in Johannesburg, maybe a chargé d'affaires. Chargé
d'affaires, maybe. Well, we'll find out in the next few hours.
Or the ambassador.
It's a really...
Because he has said there's white genocide.
White genocide in South Africa. Absolutely. And so, this is a big deal because it's the first G20 summit holding on the continent. So it's a big deal. And New Central will be bringing you updates from there. All right, let's quickly get into the papers this morning and see what the front pages are saying. Starting off with the Punch newspaper. On the front page of the Punch newspaper, we see there, Southeast leaders rally for political solution, life jail for Nnamdi Kanu. Kanu to appeal the judgment, Igbo elites to meet Tinubu, how Kanu sparked courtroom chaos before life sentence. Let's get Mr. Dotwonjo's reaction to that.
Okay, so I've listened to a lot of people, and I'm going to do it as quickly as possible. I just think that at this moment now, Nigeria needs peace more than triumph. And we have to be strategic in the way of getting things. The problem we're having in the country, back and forth, it's not a product of what is happening. It's a product of how government is responding to what's happening. And we can continue to mention, in 2014, what's it called? Fulani herders were actually classified as number 4 on the global terrorism index. The government didn't do nothing about it. Between 2021 and now, the Southeast has lost between 7 to 8 trillion naira as a result of sit at home. Because of that alone, 776 people have died as a product of that. So how is government responding to all of these things? And I think our concentration beyond what is happening, it is sad that all of these things are happening, but we must know that we need to take steps to respond to them appropriately so that every part of the community, we feel that they are properly treated within the country.
All right. Let's also see more stories. They're still on the front page of the Punch newspaper. Alleged genocide, U.S. Congress split over Nigeria's CPC designation. I don't know if you followed the
Yes,
entire... I did. What's your take on that?
The word split does not actually, I don't know whether...
Cut it for you.
Yes, because when you are talking about split, maybe we have 5 here or 5 here or 50-50 here. The conversation is, we have, minorities will always have their way. The conversation actually went on, and majority of the people felt that what Donald Trump did was right. And it's a product of what I've said before. For instance, when you have the word ISWAP, for example, I don't know, Islamic something.
Islamic State for West Africa province.
Now, when they come to attack a community and they kill 100 people, if 90 of those people are Muslim, the 10 that are Christian will make more headline. Why? Because they are Islamic group. That's the conversation. In 2003, December 2003, bandits went to Plateau State. They killed 100 people. These conversations continue. Let me tell you a sad story of what happened in Oyo State in 2002. There was a man, American citizen, that came to Ogbomoso to build an hotel. And he launched that hotel in December of that year. Within a few weeks, he was kidnapped. Despite the fact that the people paid ransom, they killed him. And when they killed him, the people who even took ransom there, they killed one of them. And in the process, you know what they did? They took his corpse back to the US to bury. What kind of conversation are we having as a nation? As we speak now, about 4 or 5 years later, no clear-cut communication as to what happened to those people who did that. So there seemed to be a communal conspiracy to continue to give Nigeria a bad name. And when we finally publish this bad name by our inactivity, I have defined security not as a result of what happened. I've said it repeatedly. It is the response of government to what happened. So when government is quiet, and I said this in 2014, and in 2015, I was making noise after the global terrorism index, this thing came out, and they ranked bandit Fulani herders as number 4 on the list. I said, see, this thing will further complicate our situation internationally. What does that mean? If you're looking at Fulani herders and they are killing people and you are not doing anything about them, what you have given to those communities is franchise to buy into such crime. And that's why you see that people now are kidnapping in the name of Fulani herders. So it is the silence of government. And when you talk about silence of government, people will come, they want to defend government. Government is not about who is in power. Government is a process of how you have been able to do things over the years. We have failed in terms of security. So the conversation that happened now, and when they were talking about the Nigeria direction as to the conversation, the direction of Nigeria is that let's continue to engage international community. And one of the ways they wanted, and they should not make that mistake, one of the ways they are planning to engage international community is to bring them to Nigeria on fact-finding mission. I hope they will not take them to Plateau. I hope they will not take them to Benue. Whatever it is that you are placing on the ground will be rubbished when they get to Plateau and Benue, and they see the fact on the ground. It is easy for somebody in Lagos to say, oh, this is just a minor case. When you get to these two communities, or when you get to Southern Kaduna, one of the ways that the government has indicted in itself is the fact that they said there was a security report that prevented El-Rufai from becoming a minister. What is the report? The report is that they suspected that he was complicit in some of the death that happened in Southern Kaduna. Southern Kaduna is populated by Christians. When you put all of these things together, this is how information is being extracted. And by the time information is extracted, by the time they put it on a magnifying glass, government is running head-scatter. I mean, the problem we have in Nigeria is response.
Just yesterday, Bishop, Most Reverend Wilfred Anagbe, I believe that's his name. He's Bishop Wilfred Anagbe of the Catholic Diocese of Makurdi, Benue State. I watched him give his testimony live to the U.S. Congress. It wasn't a thing of speculation. He's giving his report live from Nigeria, joined via Zoom. So this fact-finding mission has already begun, right? And we're seeing the reports here and the results still on the front page, top right corner. Heavy ransom, bandits demand 3 billion naira to free Kwara churchgoers. That heart-wrenching live stream video that we all watched of the bandits attacking, of that old woman hustling to safety, of the people who were killed in that attack. Now they are demanding 3 billion naira ransom. Who is going to pay this ransom? How are we going to get these people back?
Sometimes you just get emotional because the only thing that is missing, look at the video, the only thing that is missing in our entire conversation, and I think we all need to see a therapist, all of us.
Yeah.
We all need to see a therapist.
Excuse me, that was part of what was also highlighted yesterday at the U.S. Congress, that there isn't even, and I believe that Bishop Anagbe said that there isn't even any post-traumatic stress support that is being offered. Nigerians have gone through the most depressing episode of seeing their brothers and their sisters being kidnapped, and a number of these people will move from their homes to IDP camps, and that's it. There's no traumatic support for them.
I think we all need, and when I say all of us, including, maybe we should start from Mr. President, all of us need to see a therapist because we are not getting things right. And it's a product of what we have seen or what we are thinking or the explanation we are giving to situation. For instance, somebody in power, do you know the explanation somebody in power will give to this? It's because election is coming. But obviously, this is more than election coming. And I've said it repeatedly that what we are missing, sir, and I'm going to just put the word on the table now. It will sound very simple to Nigerians until I break it down. What we are missing in this entire thing is what we call commitment. Commitment, as little as that is. And I'm going
commitment and political will.
Commitment, yes, is part of it. Now, what is commitment? I'm going to cite this scenario. If Boko Haram has what we have as Nigeria, by now they will be ruling the country. If they have fighter jets, if they have 230,000 men in the armed forces that we have in Nigeria today, or maybe in 2020, I don't know the number now, if they have that, if they have the resources that government has access to, by now they will be ruling Lagos. How come we, Nigeria, that we have access to all of these things, we are unable to chase these people out of our community? That is the work of commitment. We are not committed to doing this thing that we are mouthing.
Do we have the resources?
We have the resources. The problem is not the resources. I have said it repeatedly. How much will it cost? You don't want to have, I'm being careful to mention number. If you know the amount of
defense
money,
budget keeps increasing every year. Every new year, it's a record-breaking defense budget.
We had a security expert who said, when we told him that it was increasing, he said, and he laughed. Just, was it last week or so? And he laughed, and we said, okay, it's increasing. Doesn't it seem like now that it's increasing, it should be to the benefit of those in the military and firepower? And he laughed. He said, the money increasing, whether it will get to be used for that is a different
that is it. That's what we talk about.
Defense has always had the highest allocation.
Now, when people want to steal money in government, and it's very easy, and we can bring example of what even Buhari himself said about the former NSA. When they want to steal money in government, the best way to steal money in government is to put it under security. Because you don't get to account for it. In fact, most of the state government now, they do same thing. They have, when you read the budget, you may have some little this thing that is put under security. But nobody puts security vote in the budget. Go read our budget. So what that means is that the problem we are having is not with the gun-carrying members of the military. The problem we're having is with the money-carrying members of the military. And with the decision of government, in and out, I have said it before, when people talk about political solution, I have said it repeatedly, that my experience in Nigeria, when you talk about political solution, is that it's a way of creating one solution and causing 9 problems. Because the political solution that people talked about in Niger Delta, I can ask you, how far has it gone? The political solution that people talked about with Boko Haramism, it means that let's rehabilitate these people, let's bring them back into the community. How far has that taken us? And that's why I said that we must begin to question our commitment to what is important. Let me tell you this sad story. Somebody was coming from Ibadan to Lagos for wedding on Saturday. The proper Owambe. He left Ibadan on Thursday. By the time he got to Onigari, you may not know where Onigari is, they kidnapped all of them. They kidnapped all of them. It was because they couldn't stop the wedding. So the haste was, how do we get the money so that we get these people released, so that we don't spoil, in Yoruba they say, don't spoil your day of joy, so that we don't spoil the day of joy of the to-be couple from Ibadan. You don't need prayer point to travel to Lagos. But that's the situation now. So when we continue to see all of these things, we go back to commitment of people, commitment of government. Commitment of government, and I say it repeatedly, that the concept of leadership is to show people how to behave. The display of leadership is the desire of followership. When you see your leaders, when they open door for them in armored vehicle and there's paparazzi around them, that's what your community will desire. Of course. If I desire that kind of life and I cannot get it, I go the way of crime. That's what we're saying. So when leadership says tighten your belt and they live in opulence and affluence, you are destroying the psyche of people that are following you. And it's not a question of Tinubu or somebody in power. I'm just talking about the general capacity collapse when it comes to leadership in Nigeria. What are we displaying? In the midst of insecurity, we should teach our people how to behave. And the best way to teach them how to behave is for them to believe in their government. What led to this Nnamdi Kanu issue is lack of faith in government. It's lack of faith in government. If everybody believes that government is working for them, everybody will line up behind government. But the truth is that people in authority cannot continue to slow on the path of purpose, and you want people to keep behind you. They will take other way out. You remember what happened to Sunday Adeyemo, aka Sunday Igboho? Yeah. He got tired of the way they were maltreating his people. And what he did was to say, let me lead my people to face these people. They came to his house. God saved him that day. A lot of people said he even disappeared.
They said he turned into a cat.
Whatever it is.
But they killed
a lot of people. And up to today, there's no apology. And it's a product of the semi-failure of government that led to it. Am I going to leave my people now? If I have an opportunity to defend them, I'm not going to leave them. Because we cannot continue to wish people who didn't die in peace to rest in peace. There's no resting place for them.
So what's the way forward?
And speaking about the way forward, I want us to also look at the government's response. Still on the front page of the Punch. Is it on the front page of the Punch? I saw that. No, let's move to the front page.
Is the government's response moving us forward?
Well, I had seen somewhere about President Tinubu directing the Minister of State for Defense, Bello Matawale, and 900 others, directing
That's
to relocate.
The Nation. The Nation newspaper.
Yes, Tinubu sent the Nation newspaper. Tinubu sends Matawale to Kebbi, 900 troops to Kwara. Is that an appropriate response?
In the face of what we have now, in the present reality, I'm not sure that he can do anything other than that. Because what we have done repeatedly, and sometimes it keeps me, maybe I get disturbed. If our response shouldn't be, what do they call reactionary. But of course, we haven't even got there now. My fear is this: when we move this troop, 900 from Borno to Kwara, you have forgotten that we have created a loophole there because we are now recruiting another 900. What we are saying is that let the government come across as an entity that is committed to solving crime. And the only way, sir, to come across is the names that have been mentioned as sponsors of terrorism, of banditry. Government must do something about them. And that's the only way.
Or thorough investigation of those whose names have even come up.
Thorough investigation we have done. It is now the commitment of government to be able to say, I have the courage to do this thing. When President Tinubu was out of power, There was something I like about him. It's the fact that, oh, he's a courageous man. A lot of people said, oh, he's one of the most courageous politicians that we have in Nigeria. And immediately he got to power, he did that with the economy. You know, now the figures are getting better. But of course, I've told you before that democracy is a government of both figure and feeling. The feeling is still bad, but the figure is getting better. We have to commend him. That same courage extended to security. Because every economic achievement will be rubbished on the altar of insecurity. I mean, so at the end of the day, there's nothing that's going to happen.
Because you're doing it for human beings.
The story that I'm telling you about now, there are thousands of people abroad who want to come home, bring their forests home. It's going to affect our economy. But you know what happened? Since after that death, they flew the man back. He's a Nigerian. They flew him back, and you know what happened? Some Americans from the state, I can't remember the state, they came to Nigeria to investigate what happened. Up to today, there's no way forward. So whatever exploit you are making in terms of economy, when insecurity becomes an issue, nobody will pay attention to your economy. So I said to him that the first thing to be able to do is that courage that you used that day to say subsidy is gone. That courage that didn't take you, yeah, that it didn't take you any thinking for you to know that you will liberalize the foreign exchange market.
But insecurity is not gone, but turn the corner.
We must do that now.
But what do you make of the statement where some of his allies, some of his members in the cabinet are already saying that insecurity has died down, has cooled off? If you look at they're comparing it to what it was before and now.
Reno or Mokri.
No.
I mean, I saw his tweet where he was comparing now.
I don't refer to him as a true source.
So the truth is that when this government came on board, the level of attack actually went down. But here's the complication. When you have that kind of success, you need to quickly build on it. The issue of insecurity is not a political achievement. It's a political responsibility. So in the first place, we shouldn't even get to a point where somebody is coming out to say, oh, I'm going to solve the problem of insecurity. That is your sole responsibility. That should not get any applause. But because we were under a general and everything became complicated, when a civilian came on board and there were little bit of dousing of tension, we went to church to give thanksgiving. But this is when we need him the most. This is when we need him the most. So at a point truly, compared to where we're coming from, but the thing is that you cannot continue to compare abnormality with abnormality. What we have in Nigeria today is a pure abnormality. I think I shared the story with you here. How my father stopped us from listening to 1 o'clock news on radio. It's a Yoruba news. This is how they say it. Adoloro Kontibureke. It means that there's a bomb blast in Iraq. Father stopped us from listening because we could not imagine that same thing will happen in Nigeria. That is how we grew up.
Because it was bad.
But suddenly now, Christmas Eve, 100 people came. And everybody goes as if nothing has happened. You want to travel from Ibadan to Lagos, your heart is probably in your mouth. You are praying and doing all the incantations that you can muster, reading all the psalms that can come to your head. That is not the Nigeria of our dream. And we must wake up as a people. And also, that also speaks to the fact when government became draggy in its responsibility of tackling insecurity, our community people bought into this franchise. I told you what happened the other day in one of the southeastern states. A coastal bus was going, and an Okada man just came and passed. Before minutes, they came, rain bullet on the coastal bus. They killed the policeman. I was involved in, I know the people in the coastal bus. They killed the policeman, and they kidnapped everybody in the coastal bus. So a few of them, like 4 or 5, escaped from the kidnappers and went into a farm and saw a farmer there. And explained to the farmer that, please, so something like this has happened. And they thought that the farmer was taking them to safety, only for the farmer to take them back to the kidnappers. So our local communities now, we have also brought into crime. There was a professor that was kidnapped in Osun State. He told the story of how people, maybe this one is too much. He told the story of how people were coming at night, Yoruba, speaking Yoruba, to buy human parts. Maybe it's a bit too much, but that's the reality. These are our people. You heard the story of Kwara, of how a king has also bought into the franchise of crime. So if we do not do this, it is a complex and complicated situation. And the only way to tackle that is for people to know that government is really after insecurity. You see, if we continue like this 2027 that we are saying everybody should wear cap, this 2027 that we are saying, must come, it will come.
And we will see.
It will come. We need to build more prisons.
It will come.
Guys, build decisively.
We're actually out of time. But before we go,
to
just to mention one sad story. Awolowo's grandson, Olusegun, died yesterday at the age of 62. 62, I beg your pardon.
Very sad one.
Very sad one. And this week as well, we also lost a media icon who died at the age of 82 as well. Two notable, yes, two notable and respected names also died. But this is the reality of life. I mean, when someone has lived his life and all of a sudden he bows out, maybe due to issues regarding what the human cannot control, is what people say, this is life. It's quite different from when it is taken from you, either by force, and that seems to become the norm of the day.
I mean, it's sad that we're signing off on the weekend. It's just reality.
I just want to use the medium to speak to a few Nigerians who watch us. If you can, please try and detox. In terms of detox the mind, yourself, and you can do that by possibly taking some little breaks, resting a bit, because some of the stories will weaken your mental state.
I mean, just to quickly take a few comments here. Mokoye Chukwemeka says, when we have clowns as leaders, why would they make sense of what is happening in the country? I watched the debate yesterday in America and I wept for the country. He goes on to say that they are despicable people leading us. So many comments here. Thank you, Annie Chinedu Brown, Mokoye Chukwemeka, Jeffrey Williams, and all the people who are watching and joining virtually. And just to say to Nigerians, I know that this is a hard time. It's a dark time. It's heavy on our hearts. Just like Joe has said, if you can't detox, but let's not lose hope for our country. Hope is what we have left. When you lose hope, there's really nothing left to fight for, and we cannot lose hope. We must continue to hope for the best and continue to hold our leaders to account. It's on that note that we'll close the show. We'll be back again on Monday. I am Olive Emodi.
And I'm Benga Bora.
And I'm Joe Hansen. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This is Dr.
Ojo.
John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget, Breakfast Extra is tomorrow. John Mazzino and Judith.